Welcome back. Today we're going to be covering a brand new game coming to Kickstarter very soon. It's called Ascension Tactics. And if you're not familiar with this game, it was originally and still is a deck building game that came out in 2010. I have a lot of familiarity with this game because I was actually the first person ever to buy a copy of this in August of 2010. And I've owned it since. This is a tactical game though, because they've distilled down that deck building and they've made it a tactical miniatures game. And you're using cards in order to combat other players at the table.
Yeah, there's been a lot of Ascension expansions that have come out over the years and modified the gameplay, but nothing has changed the gameplay as much as this because it brings this three-dimensional element to the game. And you're actually going to be playing this through a series of scenarios that go anywhere from 1 to 4 players. So yes, you can actually play this solo. And a lot of Ascension fans are going to be happy to hear that it does keep a lot of the same basic deck building mechanics that you're familiar with Ascension. So you've still got your card row, you've still got your runes that you're generating in order to buy new cards and add them into your deck, and you still have a lot of the same functions within these different factions. There's a lot of synergies can be built with these 4 different factions.
Yeah, and a lot of things are going to change depending upon the scenario. So the one that we're playing today and we're introducing is a 2-player scenario with a pre-built map. Now, a lot of these tiles are going to be able to be changed depending upon the scenario, and the champions that you're going to start with is going to change as well. However, in this one, we're each starting with 4 champions that are pre-assigned to us. The champions are the miniatures that are going to be moving around, and they're represented by one of these cards out in front of you. We have a couple on the board, but typically anytime you bring a champion onto the board, they're going to come in through the portal closest to you. Just to show you how these are going to move, they're going to actually be moving around on these hexes through the board. You have locations that have forest, you have locations that have these victory point areas that you want to surround, you have treasures that you can uncover. All this is going to be dictated by movement that you're going to be able to use through command points in this game.
That's right. You might remember from the basic Ascension that you can score victory points in a variety of different ways. You can buy cards that will give you victory points at the end of the game, or you can come up to the row and fight monsters and cultists. Well, Tactics changes that up entirely, and in fact, each scenario is going to tell you how you score victory points. For this particular scenario, the only way we can score victory points is by surrounding these honor zones. And for each honor zone that you control at the end of your turn, you're going to get a point. First person to 15 points just flat out wins. Now, some scenarios will still feature the familiar cultists, and in fact, those cultists will come out on the board and be able to be controlled by multiple players, so we can actually use them against each other, or in a 4-player game, we can kind of gang up on other players.
Now we have our champions out in front of us. The other thing that you're going to start with is a number of cards. 10 cards, very similar to the original Ascension. You're going to have 8 apprentices. All of these are going to give you runes in order to buy more cards. And then you're going to have 2 militia cards. These provide the command points in order to move your different champions. Now, each of the players is also going to start with one of these command banners, which is going to do 2 things. One, it's going to determine the turn order for the entirety of the game, plus it's going to give you some built-in command points. So if you're not drawing into those, you're going to have some base ones built in. The starting player in this scenario has 2. And that 2 goes towards moving your characters. Each one of these champions has a specific cost on them. I have 2 that just require 2, but I have 2 others that require 4. Now, the second player also is going to have some built in, but being the second player, at the start of the game, they're going to have a slight boost.
So it doesn't translate directly combat points to damage like it does in the basic game. In fact, if you want to attack your opponent's champions, you can't just attack their card. You need to actually be adjacent to them in this physical space, or with the case of some ranged champions, within line of sight. Now, each one of these champions has specific amounts of damage they do and a specific amount of health they have or defense. If you manage to meet or exceed that health value, you can kill them in an attack. They're just taken off the board. They can be brought back in on the next turn of your opponent. Now, these abilities can all be augmented. In the base game, you had constructs that would sit off to the side of the board and give you prolonged effects. In this version of the game, they actually equip directly to your champions, and they give you bonuses to their attack, defense, and sometimes even speed and other abilities that can be triggered.
Yeah, so for instance, Prime here has a native 9 attack and a native 9 defense. However, if I get this ultimate construct, I can slot it underneath of it, doubling both of those. And a lot of these are additions to those particular things, including your ability to move throughout the board. Now, these cards, just like Ascension, they provide all kinds of unique abilities. A lot of them are going to allow you to draw into more cards, maybe add some more command points, to add movement values to your specific people. you just need to look at those cards. Plus, they've added a couple new ones that are like ambush, meaning that the moment that you buy them, they're going to do something for you.
Yeah, there are a lot of new terms and things that interact with the tactical map, a lot of keywords that you'll find throughout the game that kind of change up the way the game is played. But of course, the basic core of the game of having your hand of 5 cards, playing all 5 of those cards, and then passing to your opponent, it stays the same. What I really enjoy about this game is that you can kind of do things in any order on your turn. You can play a few cards, you can use some command points to tap a champion and move them on the board, then you can come up here and buy and go back to attacking. So there's not really direct phases on your turn, but when you're out of runes to spend and combat points to use, then you'll just have to pass to your opponent.
And as you can imagine, there is a lot of tracking in this game. So if you're already familiar with Ascension, you could probably hop right in. But for people that aren't, you have to be aware of all the cards, because when you start combining all these cards together, you're going to be doing a lot of different functions on your turn. Again, one of the cool things that I like, and you just mentioned that, my favorite thing about this game is it does distill Ascension down to a tactical board game with almost no disparity between the two. If you played Ascension, you are 100% familiar with this game, and if you're not, it's a really easy game to grab onto because, like you said, you're just playing cards out in front of you, doing the actions of those cards, buying more cards, and then going right at it. And for most miniatures games, for me, they're super intimidated because they have these huge rule books with line of sights and rulers and all kinds of different abilities that key off other abilities. These cards are just doing what they say on them, and it's very fast. Your turns can take 30 seconds up to maybe a minute each, and then you move on to the next player.
Yeah, and of course, there's no dice. They fought that urge to add dice into the game. Everything is done deterministically by these cards. You always know what your opponent is going to have. However, there are still some combat tricks. You have these treasure tokens out on the board that can be collected that can do things like increase your attack or defense or give you abilities like strike back, which lets you do damage even when you're defeated. So there's definitely still those combos hidden out here on the board, and still the combos inherent within these cards. People that played Ascension are familiar with the idea that you can just pull off some crazy turns, and that is definitely still present in this game.
Yeah, and this is just a core sampling of what we've experienced. We know there's going to be more scenarios. There's going to be cards in here that inflect new champions, so even though you may only start with 4, you may have the ability to grab new ones through the course of the game. And obviously, we haven't seen nearly the number of cards that are going to be available in this game, so there's all kinds of keywords that we haven't even experienced up to this point. So that is Ascension Tactics. Make sure you guys understand that this is a 1 to 4 player game. So we don't even know what that means. It could be played in teams, possibly.
Yeah, they have, with the scenarios, there's really no limit to what they can do.
Yeah.
I mean, even making it a solo game, I bet a lot of people out there are probably going to play this solo.
Yeah, if you have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. As always, this is a 100% prototype that you see in front of you. Go to the Kickstarter page to see all the final components, and we will see you guys next time. Hey everyone, if you guys enjoyed this video, please consider dinging the old bell below. That is going to help notify you of new videos that are uploaded to our channel. And as always, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and please consider watching all of our videos, one of which you can see right here to my left.